I'm building the second of the 3 Parkside Dundas O-Gauge wagon kits today. This one is a Northeastern 4-plank open wagon. I'm loosely basing it on a vintage Millboro brand Northeastern wagon that makes an appearance in Season 1's episode, Thomas's Train. The model itself is built exactly as it's supplied in the box with no additional changes or details made. Injection molded side frames and the car body, coupling gear, wheels, decals, and buffers. Let's get to it. Like the 5-plank I built before it, the 4-plank builds from one side and a base, with the remaining 3 sides added afterwards. While the 4-plank prototype shares some details with the 5-plank, the castings for this truck are not related. There are 4 vertical beams to glue on, 2 per end. They're aligned to fit, but aren't difficult to install. The sole bar and axle guards on the 4-plank are identical to those on the 5-plank. I aligned the axle guards to the sole bars, assembled the axle boxes, and glued them level and in place. As I've said before, the W-irons aren't really precise enough to allow the axle boxes to float without compounding potential derailment issues. Trying to improve on the mistakes of the previous wagon, I used a step drill bit to enlarge the buffer housing mounts. This was still a little bit cumbersome as I didn't have a hand chuck big enough for the bit, but the resulting holes were just large enough for the white metal housings to fit snugly into the finished ends. Coupling hooks are identical to the 5-plank and install in the same manner. Slide the hook through the beam, install the spring, spread the forks. With everything ready for paint, I capped off each brass axle bushing with masking tape. While I shot this one with Mr. Surfacer 1000 as a primer, the gray shade that I chose as the color coat happened to be a primer as well. This would have been fine as a final shade if it weren't for the decals, but like the 5-plank before it, I masked the top half off and shot the lower body in flat black first and added a mist of gloss coat afterwards. To prevent potentially marring the finished decals, I installed the sprung buffers at this point. Each nut was jammed in place with the tiniest bit of Loctite 603. The Parkside kit comes with its own decal sheet. The decals are not identical to the Northeastern wagon on the show, but they'll do. Each decal was applied in my favorite manner. Wet them for 10 seconds, let the excess water bleed off on top of a towel for a minute or so, and then apply the decal onto the model with a bit of microset. Want to drag it on over. It's not going to want to drag over. We'll put some of this stuff on it, and it's going to become another fiasco. After the decals were positioned, I brushed on a bit of micro sole and allowed them to shrink and conform overnight. Look at how nice those decals went into the planks on the side of the wagon. Indeed. Once the decals had settled, I weathered directly over the decals and glossed clear, the latter of which seemed to allow the dry brush pigments to smear more easily. For better or worse, I went extensive on this example's weathering, and I say the end result adds a great amount of visual appeal to what would otherwise be an inconspicuous piece of rolling stock. Next time on Sodor Scratch Building. Round 2. Nice.